Lee Anderson's a British politician. He's, of course, the Reform UK MP for Ashfield. His political journey reflects quite a remarkable shift across party lines, but as he was just telling me before we went on air, a shift that many millions of voters seem to have gone through as well. He's shaped by his working class roots and his outspoken style. Raised in a coal mining family, Lee worked as a miner for a decade and campaigned for Labour's Michael Foot in 1983. I guess his political career began in 2015 as a Labour councillor on Ashfield District Council. In 2018, he defected to the Conservative Party, becoming a councillor in Mansfield. Into the 2019 election, he won Ashfield's parliamentary seat for the Tories. As a Conservative, he served as Deputy Party Chairman under Rishi Sunak, but resigned to oppose the Rwanda asylum plan. His controversial remarks include claiming Islamists controlled Sadiq Khan, led to his whip suspension in February 2024. Another classic case of self-harm by the Conservative leadership there. In March 2024, he switched to Reform, becoming its first MP, later its chief whip. He convincingly won his seat under his new colours at the last general election. Lee, great to have you with us. How the devil are you doing, my friend?
Well, that's a great introduction, Mark. Thank you for that. And I'm really looking forward to the next hour.
So this might help the audience frame their questions a little bit as well, just so you know the sort of themes I'm going to go on. We're going to talk about the record of the Labour government. We're going to talk about the rise of reform. We're going to talk about some of the big issues facing Britain. And I think the Reform UK slogan is "Reform will fix it." I'm going to ask a little bit about how. And then we're going to touch a bit on the future of the right of centre in Britain. What should the relationship be, if any, between the Conservatives and Reform UK? Lee, let me start off with your audit. I think we're now, 300 days into this new Labour government. Keir Starmer's negative ratings are the worst of any Prime Minister after 300 days in office. On a scale of 1 to minus 1,000, in which 1 is bad and minus 1,000 is utterly abysmal, how would you rank the Labour government so far?
I think you need to just broaden that gauge a little bit, Mark, because it's shocking, to be honest. And I look at his backbenchers, the people that's actually sat behind him, and they're even worse than what the government are. These, couple of hundred newbies have come in, and basically they're just voting fodder. They'll do whatever their whips tell them to do. But a classic example today, actually, in the statement by the Home Secretary on the grooming gangs, on the rape gangs inquiry. Yes, we're going to get a full inquiry, and backbench MP after backbench Labour MP got up and said they welcome the inquiry. Yeah, just a short while ago, Mark, these are the same MPs that voted against a full inquiry. So they're just cattle, they're just sheep. They're following the whip's orders, and what orders they are at the moment. We've seen now. I think politics is pretty simple for me. It's very simple. I go back home on a Thursday. I call in my local pub on the way back. It might be a Witherspoons, it might be my local, the Doghouse. I talk to people in the pub, then I talk to people walking up the street. I talk to people in the shopping centres, in the malls, in the marketplace, and they tell me what they think of this country and what they think of me. Then the following week, I go back to Parliament and I say what my constituents are saying. It's pretty simple stuff. The problem down here in Westminster is we live in this blob, this bubble, and a lot of the politicians, the only people they're talking to is themselves. And it's time they went out into the real world and talked to real people about real issues. If they did that in the Tory party, it's a shame to see where they are at the moment, the once great Conservative Party. But what we've got left now in Parliament, Mark, we've got no opposition apart from Reform UK. The Tories are made up in 3 parts. There's 121 of them. There's the wet Liberals, who quite frankly should go and join the Liberal Democrats. There's the ones to the right of the party, who I still get on reasonably well with, people like, I don't know, Sir John Hayes and Edward Lee and people like that. Then there's another third who quite frankly don't know what they are. They just want to be members of Parliament. And quite frankly, they're probably the worst of the lot.
I'm going to come on to the Tories, and no doubt you'll give them a good kicking, Lee, and probably so will I, actually, even though I'm still a member of the Tory party. But on Labour, I mean, what I expected when they won the last election by default, really, but not much enthusiasm for them, even though it's, I think, the loveless landslide is how the last election was described. I kind of expected them to have a plan. Yeah. I mean, it was looking pretty obvious for a long time they were going to form a government. I was pretty sure everything in the plan I would dislike, but I kind of thought that they would roll it out with some modicum of competence.
I think
I
the
don't think they have a clue what they're doing or what their strategy is. I
well,
can't discern one.
yeah, they haven't got a clue, Mark. It's sixth form politics most of the time. It's an ideology. You can see the smirks on the front benches. We sit there opposite, challenging them on their policies, on what they're actually saying in the chamber. The smirks. Again today, Jess Phillips was smirking the whole time through the statement. It's just disgusting. Let's get back to some policies that they have got. Look at the employment rights bill, which is terrifying businesses up and down the country. Now, the one thing I do every week without fail, Mark, it's either a Friday or a Saturday. I will go and walk around my local businesses, shops, market traders, cafes, restaurants, places like that, just for, to tell them what I've been up to and get their feedback. And let me tell you, they're absolutely terrified of what's happening with this government, with the NIC rise, the national minimum wage rise, and we've got the employment rights coming in soon. They're not recruiting, they're finishing people. And just simple things like the 0 hours contract. Yeah, that's not attractive for everybody. But if you're working in hospitality, for example, you need to rely on those people that want to do 2 hours one week, 10 hours another, to make your business run, to make your business thrive. And Nigel does say it a lot, and he's bang on his fries when he says this. Not one member of Labour cabinet has ever run a business in their life, and this is the problem we've got. We've got idiots. I call them political imbeciles, which is probably the right term for them at the moment. They've never turned a pound. They've never turned a profit. They've never had to employ staff apart from their own office staff, which is dead easy to do anyway. And they've got no idea how the economy works. And these are people, Mark, that's making multi-billion-pound decisions to run the economy. We've only got 5 MPs. I'm not a businessman. I once had a window cleaning round when I was 15. I tell you what, that's more experience than what the business secretary's got at the moment. He's absolutely clueless. The only experience he's got is telling untruths on his CV. But look at Ticey in our party. You've got Nigel Farage as well. These are successful businessmen that know how to make a profit, that know how to run a business. It should be people like this making business decisions for the country.
It's really interesting that, and I agree. It is shocking. Often I think on our side of the political ledger, Lee, we bristle a bit when people mention things like diversity. But the diversity I'd like to see is a less monocultural cabinet, right? These are all just bloody lawyers and academics and lefty activists. I want, a few self-made businessmen, a few people who run a big company, a few people with a legal background, a few people with a civil service background or whatever. There's no diversity there. There might be on skin colour and gender, but there's no diversity of thought around that cabinet table at all, is there?
There's not at all, Mark. I always hope, and I talk about back in the day. Back in the day, the Labour Party would draw on experience from business, from the health service, and even in the trade union movement. When I was a miner for many years, and what they used to do is the coal board, or the National Union of Mine Workers, should I say, they had training schools where, if you're interested in politics and being part of the trade union movement, bear in mind it was a closed shop union at the time, so you had no choice. You had to be in a union, but they would run training schools for prospective members of Parliament. And to be fair to the Labour Party, I said it in a debate last week, they drew some pretty decent MPs from the trade union movement as well. But these were men. These were men, Mark, that had actually got their hands dirty. They'd been down a coal mine at the age of 15 till the 40 or 50, done a proper grafting, horrible, dirty job, then became involved in the trade union movement, and then progressed on to being a member of Parliament. But I spoke to a Labour MP last year on a trip somewhere, and I asked her what her profession was before she joined before she became an MP. She says, I was a trade unionist. I said, no, but what profession was you in? She says, no, I was a trade unionist. And I couldn't get my head around that. This is a person that left university, gone straight from university and gone to work for a trade union, and got no experience in the industries of the people she was representing.
So really, she was a political activist, basically.
Well, yeah, that's
rather than somebody from a trade.
Yeah, but how can you talk to a bricklayer or a bus driver or a train driver or somebody who works at a power station about employment stuff when you can't empathise or sympathise with their situation? You've never worked in that industry. We've got it all wrong, mate. It's absolute nonsense.
Yeah. Let's talk a bit about in fact, quite a lot about the spectacular rise of Reform UK, right? And I really want, an honest dialogue with you about what on earth is happening here. So, like at the last election, you get the breakthrough. You did a little better than I expected. I thought Farage would win his seat. I thought you'd probably hold your seat as an incumbent, but I thought there'd probably only be two of you. You won five. One's left, but you've won a by-election from absolutely nowhere. You're topping the opinion polls regularly now. People just roll their eyes when it's Reform at 30% and the government 8-9% behind it. That's the new normal, apparently. You sweep the country in the local council elections. Be honest with me. This must have been beyond your wildest expectations over the past 12 months.
Yeah. I'll take an honesty tablet, Mark. Yes, it was. I think you've got to go a little bit further back, though. And again, it's not complicated politics. We look at the referendum, to leave the European Union, when everybody said we wouldn't win that vote, and we did. I know it was a marginal win, but that was the mood of the country at the time, and we sort of made a bodge job of that. And then I fast forward to 2019, the European elections. I was at the county in Mansfield that night, and when they were tipping the votes out of the ballot box, I thought the vans must have been hijacked on the way, because I mean the amount of votes for the Brexit Party was scary. So again, you see in these traditional areas, these red wall areas, they'd all voted to leave. In the 2016 referendum. Then when it come to the next European elections, they all voted Brexit Party. And then fast forward 2 years, when it came to Boris, it was a simple election based on Boris, Brexit, and Jeremy Corbyn. We've got three factors really that put the wind in our sails. And it was the same areas again that voted for Boris and the Conservative Party. And then you look again, you fast forward another few years, and me and Matt Vickers, who's an MP in Stockton, a decent lad, is a Tory MP. When you look at the red wall from 2019 to 2024 at the last elections, there's only me and Matt that retained our seats. Now, Matt, nice guy, but the only reason he retained his seats is because there was a favourable boundary change, which made it easier for him to win. But I was the only one, and everybody around me, apart from Jenrick, it went red again. It went back to Labour. So, but that was easy for me to figure out. I think these voters, they voted to leave, then they voted Brexit in the European elections, then they voted for Boris to get Brexit done, and then when they really, really fed up and a bit pissed off, they voted for me again. A lot of them in Ashfield, because I'm the only one who's been true, even though I've swapped my political colours. I've been true to what I believe in, and Ashfield. I always say Ashfield, where I represent, is a capital of common sense, and it truly is. And we've seen at the local council elections last time, Mark, and you're quite right, it's beyond my wildest dreams. I expected 2 or 3 councils, we won 10. We had nearly 700 councillors, 2 mayors. In my seat of Ashfield and neighbouring Mansfield, we won every single seat. Not just one, we were getting 55 to 60% of the vote in these seats. That's from a standing start. It's phenomenal. So this is growing. This is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And my prediction is, at the next general election, if Kemi Badenoch keeps saying to people who's left the Tory party, you're welcome to join the Reform Party, more will join. And not only that, more will, some of the wets I spoke about earlier, they'll go to the Lib Dems. So she has to be very, very careful what she says, because people in this country now are fed up of being treated as useful idiots, as voting fodder. And that's how they've been treated in the past. And that's why they're coming to Reform UK. We're filling a gap, and we speak in the same language as millions and millions of people up and down the country. And remember, I've just finished on this one for this section, Mark. Remember at the last election, the Tories were saying, vote Reform, get Labour. Well, I'll tell you what, you're going to get Labour anyway. So, I mean, you should be campaigning on what you're going to do for the country and your track record, not campaigning on vote Reform, get Labour. Tell you what, vote Reform, you get Reform.
Lee, it's really interesting. And there's, I guess I'm going to put 2 contrasting ideas to you. One would suggest that this Reform phenomenon is the real deal, right? And what I think makes it a bit different to, I guess, what you could call its predecessor parties, UKIP and the Brexit Party, is although UKIP had a few other policies, this was a kind of one-shot game in those days. And you referenced the 2019 Euro elections. People were like, I just want to get across the message. I want Brexit done. And there's a party called the Brexit Party. I'm voting for that. Reform seems to be tapping into something considerably wider than that, that the kind of entire political system is broken. Westminster doesn't listen. Immigration is out of control. Wokery is out of control. Nothing bloody works in Britain. Taxes are too high. Net zero is crazy. There's now a much wider agenda. It's not just I wanted to get out of the EU. You know, it's a much bigger agenda. However, on the flip side, one might argue that it's a bit of a bubble, because what sort of happened is the Conservatives have yet to be forgiven for their 14 years in office, where they achieved the square root of sod all, one might say, and especially in the last couple of years of it. So the Tory brand was always going to be on the floor for a while. And you've benefited from, as we were discussing at the top of the show, the absolutely parlous record of the Labour government. So with the Conservatives still on the naughty step and Labour making a mess of everything it does, it's sort of, aren't you the obvious people just to go to for while that is the case? But if Labour or Tory, either of them or both of them, were to get their act back together, you know, do you think you're a castle made on sand, or is there a more robust backing of this 30% or so of the electorate?
Well, I think, Mark, to be honest, trust in politicians is probably at an all-time low. They don't trust the Tories, like for the reasons you've just said, had 14 years. And I used to sit on the back benches, you know, asking questions and trying to hold the government to account. I was on the Home Affairs Select Committee, and they put me on that, and it sort of backfired on the Conservative Party at the time, because I was asking ministers and Home Office officials some really challenging questions, which I think the Conservative government at the time didn't like. But you touched on earlier about policies. They have no policies. I don't know what Tory policy is. I'm not sure what the Labour Party's policy is. I'm not sure what the backbenchers even think. But the big things, the big issues on the doorstep are immigration, obviously. And I know we bang on about that a lot, but it comes up all the time. So we're going to bang on about it. And net zero is a big one. It's crippling businesses. And I do go to businesses every week, as I said, and speak to SMEs. And their biggest complaint is the cost of their energy bills. You know, it's stopping them expanding, it's stopping them reinvesting into their companies. Chuck that on top of the NIC rise and the Employment Rights Bill and all this stuff, and they're frit for what's going to happen in the future. But let me just tell you a little story, Mark, about the madness of net zero. And I've told it a few times. You might have heard it before, but Drax Power Station, we all know the story. It used to burn coal from a nearby coal mine in North Yorkshire, and we had a great idea to close this pit, and we turned this power station into a power station which burns wooden pellets, renewable energy allegedly. So these wooden pellets come from forests in North America and Canada. We chop down trees in North America. We then put them on a diesel guzzling cargo ship who's got all these diesel guzzling power tools that saws them up, dries them up, and then we bring them over the Atlantic into a dock on the west of our country. They're then transported by diesel guzzling trains to Drax Power Station. They're then pulverized into a dust or a powder, whatever they do. That's fired into the power station to produce electricity. And they class that as renewable energy. And actually, it emits, I think it's 4 times more carbon than the previous coal-fired power station that was there. And we subsidise this to the tune of about £2 million a day. British people's money subsidising a power station that burns trees, for goodness sake, and we say this is renewable energy. And this is the madness. And this is I've challenged Ed Miliband on this many times, but I don't blame Ed Miliband. The Tory government saw this. And then we've got the case of the coal mine in Cumbria, which produces metallurgical coal. This is high quality coking coal that could have been used in the steelworks, which have closed down in Port Talbot. We could use them in Scunthorpe as well. But again, the ideology, the sixth form politics, the climate activists, the green lobby says, no, we can't have a coal mine. We've got duties to the environment. You know what? Meanwhile, in China, in India, in Russia, in the United States, they're using coal to make steel, to make products, and guess what? They're selling them back to us. It's absolute madness, mate.
Yeah, I buy all of that. I think carbon net zero is completely ludicrous policy. You're right, because all we're really doing is exporting our carbon footprint
Yeah.
and then virtue signaling about it. And as you
Yeah.
say, probably with a bigger carbon footprint. It's as if we don't really care about carbon emissions. We just care about the number of carbon emissions in British airspace,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that makes no goddamn difference at all. But I suppose on this, do you think climate change is a thing at all? I mean, is it that carbon net zero is the wrong policy to deal with it because you get all of these perverse things that we're just importing
So
carbon? But is there a problem here at all, or should we just relax and
yeah.
drill baby drill, as Nigel's friend, the president of the United States, would say?
Well, I've said that before, and I think we should just chill out a little bit on this madness. And I think, I always try and keep things simple in politics because I think sometimes politicians try to overcomplicate things, and it's simple for me. Well, there is a reason that you don't ride around London on a horse and cart. There's a reason I don't ride around on a horse and cart, and that's because business, private enterprise, entrepreneurs saw something about transport and they made steam engines and then they made trains and then they made the automobiles and stuff like this. And I say, let business figure it out because they're the ones that turn a profit. They're the ones with the bright ideas. They're the ones that find the cure for everything. Because, these entrepreneurs, these brilliant people that do this stuff, these inventors, whoever it is, Mark, they've got brilliant minds. And when there's some that do it to turn a profit. But, I mean, I've been to JCB on a visit there. And when you learn the story of that man, how he created that company and what he went through to produce. I think the first thing he ever built was a wheelbarrow, and people actually laughed at him, but he kept going and going and going, and he's solved all sorts of problems around the world with the machinery he produces. No government interference at all, or somebody in Whitehall or somebody on the front bench telling him what to do, or how much to pay his workers, or what sort of rules he should adhere to. He's done it himself, and we have in this country, mate, we have such talent with people. I read a statistic somewhere, and this was produced by a report in Japan, I think it was, that over the past 1,000 years, the UK has come up with over 50% of the inventions for this world. And that tells you a lot about our great country, how we're innovative, we're inventors, we can turn a profit, we can make stuff, we can produce vaccines and stuff like this. And government should leave these people alone and let them flourish and let them get on with it. And if this bloke earns £1 million a year, I'm not bothered, because I tell you what, Mark, that bloke who earns £1 million a year, he pays 450 grand a year in tax and national insurance. That's enough for 10 nurses.
Yeah, and he's probably employing people as well, and he's spending his money here.
Spending a bucket load of money as well.
Yeah. No, I agree with all of that. Although on the cart and horse point, you're right, Lee. I don't travel by cart and horse, but here's a stat to conjure with. Traffic in Zone 1 now goes more slowly than when it was by horse and cart. Can you believe that?
I can believe it. And
Sherlock Holmes was getting round faster in a hansom cab than I get around in a bloody Uber. Madness.
I tend to come down on the train, a diesel guzzling train from East Midlands Parkway, because I tell you, I don't come in the car, Mark, and drive around London, because every street's a booby trap. It's either a lane you can't go down, there's a speed limit, there's something else, and every time I come down, I get a fine. And I tell you what, Mayor Khan's not having no more of my money.
Yeah, wise man, wise man. Let's fire at you a few questions we've got from the audience here about reform. There's a bit of a mishmash, but Thomas Gordon asks, where does Lee stand on the burqa ban?
Yeah, ban it straight away. And if you want a broader answer, is not just the burqa. This is not reform being racist or bigoted. You look at, I think there's 7 other European countries banned face coverings. It's face coverings full stop. It's not just the burqa. I mean, I saw and I'm going to say a person a few weeks back in a burqa, and this person must have been nearly 7 feet tall. And I'm thinking to myself, goodness gracious, that's a bloke. I mean, it might have been a woman, I don't know, because it was a full burqa. And so there's the security aspect. And also, face coverings in general, Mark, I feel uncomfortable when I see 3 or 4 youths on bikes with the balaclavas on, driving around. I mean, Park Lane's a good example. Up that end of London, they're circling around, they're pinching phones, they're pinching watches or whatever. I think in a civilized society, when you're walking about in public, you should show the next person your face. That's what I want. Honesty. I want to live in an open society where we're not covering our faces up, because there is a security risk. And if other countries can do it, and even Muslim countries can do it, then why can't we? I mean, they say it's racist. Some of these Labour MPs say it's racist, but I always say this: you can be white, brown, pink, yellow, whatever colour you want, and still be a Muslim. So it's not racist.
It's really interesting this, because I've got a lot of sympathy with what you've said, that a trusting society requires people to look at each other in the eyes.
Yeah.
But isn't this another example? Well, I don't actually know what reform policy is, but reform, obviously, with Sarah Pouchen, your new MP, sort of kicked off this debate. Isn't this an example of reform having like a very clear position, might be popular with a good number of the electorate, but when you start to try and work out the exact policy that comes from this, it gets a bit trickier. I mean, if we're going to ban face coverings in public, how the hell are you going to police Halloween, for example? Is that going to be illegal? So, you know what I mean? Well, it's sort of, when can you wear a motorcycle helmet? When can't you wear a motorcycle helmet?
Yeah.
Now, I'm basically all in favour of the UK moving away from having been a country in which face coverings were compulsory to be a country where there aren't any. But all of that detail flows from it, like Halloween, a classic example. Now, I know you don't have in mind that you want to ban it, but there's a danger that you ban face coverings, those sort of festivals and cultural events,
Well, I'm surprised that Halloween's not been banned anyway, with the current sort of culture that we live in at the moment. But I think in situations like that, you've got to apply a sense of some common sense. And unfortunately, in this country, a lot of common sense has gone out the window. So you're quite right with situations like Halloween. You'd have to, for little children putting masks on and knocking on your door, trick-or-treating. I mean, that's acceptable. But policy-wise, we've got 4 years till the next general election. These are ideas that we're looking at now, and it's a direction of travel. They're ambitions that we want to see come into fruition, because I think we will win the next general election. Well, I mean, if you'd have said that to me 6 months ago, I'd have said, no, you're mad. You need carting off somewhere. But now I look at the state of British politics. I look at our membership. I look at some of the businessmen that I meet on a regular basis that's coming on board. They always don't want to be named, because there's still a little bit taboo sometimes being a reformer. There's millions of reformers out there. But I'm having a business lunch next month, and some really successful local rich businessman that's going to come and have lunch with us and chew the fat. These are probably businessmen that wanted to come 12 months ago, because they can see the direction of travel as well. They could see their businesses suffering, and they could see no way out apart from a reform government.
Really interesting you say that. There's a few other questions then which lead on from that, I think, about reform's fitness to govern, I guess. I mean, you're right. The opinion polls now, if you map them onto a general election, you win the election with a big majority. But are you confident that you can actually go from 5 MPs to winning an election, which would be a massive electoral success, obviously? But would you be equipped to find whatever it is you need to find, 25 cabinet ministers, 100 junior ministers, people who know their way around the Whitehall process? Or, might you end up with 350 people in Parliament, no doubt all very smart, all very well-meaning, all very commonsensical, but, in the field of politics and government, don't really know which way's up?
Well, I mean, we are looking. Got people that are currently applying to become candidates, Mark, and you know the process. We're looking for the brightest and the best to potentially become MPs. And I got asked this question last week about, there's only 5 of you. You haven't got the breadth and depth of the Conservative Party or the Labour Party. And I just say to them, have you not been paying attention for the past 10, 15, 20 years? You've had all these so-called experienced Tory ministers and Labour politicians now on the front bench, and look at the mess they've made of the country. These people, Mark, I mean, I saw it in the Tory party last time. I had some really good friends in the Conservative Party. I still have. And a lot of the best ones, if I'm honest, lost a seat at the last election. The rest of them, the snivellers, they've always, as soon as they got elected, they were snivelling around the whip's office looking for promotion all the time, spending too much time in this place, in this Westminster bubble, and not enough time in their own constituency listening to real concerns. And like I say, politics is not that difficult. The biggest problem we have in politics at a national level, and it's the same with councils, is for the councils, it's the officers pushing back, and for national level, it's the civil servants pushing back, and they will try and they'll try and be mischievous, because a product a consequence of the Blair days is our civil service now is full of woke people. There's some good people in there, by the way, because we've had a few whistleblowers, but it's full of the wokerati who want to push back at every opportunity. Home Office is a classic example. You may have seen me on the Home Affairs Select Committee last year challenge Mycroft and Ridley. What a pair of clowns they were. I asked them a basic question of how many illegal migrants that's arrived on small boats did you deport last month? They shuffled their papers for 10 minutes, looked at each other, got gormless expressions on their faces, haven't got a clue what they're talking about. And these are the people, Mark, that's running our civil service. So this is the problem. So when people say to me, well, you haven't got the experience, all we're going to do is we're doging the local councils at the moment. We've got 10 councils, what we've got to doge. We're already uncovering loads of corruption, misspending, money gone missing, all sorts of deviousness in these councils where millions and millions of pounds of taxpayers' money has been misspent or misused. If we can show the country, once we've doged all the 10 councils, that we've discovered all this, we've unearthed this corruption and millions of pounds have gone missing. If we can prove that to people, then I think we're in a good position. Then people think, you know what, look at these reform councils here. They've gone in, they've done what they said they were going to do, they've uncovered all this nastiness, and you know what, let's give them a cracking government.
That's really interesting. I mean, actually, Danny Bromage says, has reform's recent success at county level put them at risk? It would appear many are out of their depth, he's suggesting, are causing different delay. Do you really think you've got to deliver there? Because he goes on to say, are you worried their failures could affect the 2029 general election outcome? You know, if in, I don't know, Kent or Durham, you haven't sort of turned it around and the councils are still going bust. And all right, you found a couple of wacko DEI training programs to cancel and the rainbow flag's been replaced with the Union Jack, and hurrah for that. But other than that, you know, the potholes are no better and the social care is no better. A heck of a lot of your governing credibility is now hanging on how well run these 10 councils turn out to be, right? And you may pick up more next year as well.
And so it should be, Mark. We should be held accountable. I mean, I was talking about Steve before we came online. It's voters are more nimble these days. They pay more attention. For example, in Ashfield, I've been voted in as a Labour councillor, as a Tory MP, and as a Reform MP. And people will make their own mind up. They'll see if you've delivered on your promises, and that's how democracy should be. And we've had a two-party state for far too long. We've come along. We've blown them away at the council elections. And you know what, Mark? If we had held all the elections, which we should have done in places like Essex and I think Norfolk, they were due to have elections as well, we'd have cleaned up in those areas as well. But we have to deliver. We have to say, we have to do what we say we're going to do, uncover all these savings, try and run these local authorities, these unitary authorities, as a business. That's how they should be run. Every single pound of taxpayers' money should be accountable for. It should be as if it's your own money. And if we can do that in local authorities, in councils, county councils, whatever, then I think we can do it with other things like the health service as well. Because I look at the amount of money that's being spaffed, another 30 billion last week and for the health service. Let me tell you, Mark, that the National Health Service is the biggest employer in Ashfield. 6,000 people. And I tell you what, lots of them voted for me at the last election. The health workers, I know for a fact, they came out and campaigned with me. They see firsthand daily the waste, the money that's being wasted in the National Health Service. Too many middle managers, DEI roles, rainbow flags all over the place, ambulances being painted with this inclusive nonsense. I tell you what, when a person goes to the hospital, they want to be treated for the condition they've got. They're not bothered if they see a rainbow flag. They're not bothered about diversity roles. They just want to get better. And I think we've missed that in this country over the past 20 or 30 years.
Yeah. So somebody once pointed out to me that I think in the race to be the biggest employer in the world, it's quite a tight three-way race, and it ebbs and flows between the nationalised Indian railways, the Chinese Red Army and the National Health Service. But somebody suggested to me when it was very close between the National Health Service and the Chinese Red Army on employers was that he feared that the National Health Service kills more people than the Chinese Red Army. I don't know if that's true or not, but it's certainly a monolith. Now, look, just on some of the sort of internal politics of reform, obviously Farage would be Prime Minister. He is the favourite to be the next Prime Minister of the United Kingdom after Keir Starmer. But Keith Barber asks, why does Nigel Farage keep falling out with so many people in his own party? I don't want to relive with you all the backroom spats that the reforms had, but a narrative was built up that over Nigel's career, he's found it really difficult to work with, I don't know, big teams of talented people as the leadership. So there's all these, stories going back to Robert Kilroy Silk about Stephen Wolfe, and then, more recently, Lowen Habib. I mean, clearly, if you like, that doesn't matter so much if you've got the force of personality and the communication skills and charisma of Farage, and you're running a kind of minority party on 15% of the vote. But my God, if that is a failing, that would matter a lot in a prime minister, right? I mean, sitting around the cabinet table with him will be 25 other people who he needs to trust and work with. And frankly, most of whom would probably want his job at some point in the future. What's your take on that? And somebody else asked as well, what is he really like, Nigel, as a person to work with? I mean, I know him a little, but I've met him a good few times over many years. But Barry Malpass asked, what's Nigel really like? Would he really make a good PM?
I would say it's quite easy to answer that. I mean, let's be candid. A lot of politicians, well, I think it's human nature that we're a selfish bunch, regardless of what sort of job you do. And one of the reasons Boris was selected as the Conservative leader just before the last Parliament is not because of the people agreed with his principles, his policies, his direction of political travel, because quite frankly, nobody really knew what it was. But what they did, they voted for him more because he was a brilliant communicator, a great campaigner. And they knew, some of the selfish ones knew they would win the election if Boris was a leader. And he got a stonking majority. So, I mean, but, ultimately, a lot of those people who backed him knifed him in the back and got rid of him. But when you move on to like Nigel, what's he like? Nigel is probably the best political communicator. Well, he is, that I've seen in my lifetime. When I'm out with Nigel, he gets mobbed like a rock star. When it was up in Ashfield a few months back before the locals, young kids, 15, 16, 17, coming up for a selfie with Nigel Farage. He's like a pop star. It's absolutely incredible. Now, if I want to keep my seat, which I do for the next election, and I want Reform UK to win the next election, I want a leader who is of that stature, who is a brilliant communicator, who everybody wants to talk to, they want to feel, they want to touch. And you know what? He speaks common sense. And I've had him in this office where I sit now, sits on my settee a couple of times a week, and we have a good old natter about what's happening in my patch and what's happening in his patch. And I don't see what people are saying, your Ben Habibs and the Ruperts and other people say about Nigel. You have to accept, when you're a politician and you're in especially in a small party like this, you have to accept, Mark, that there is a pecking order. And for me, Nigel is there. He's the Messiah. He's the one that got us all elected. He's the one that will get us the donors in. He's the one that can go to every country in the world and be instantly recognised by world leaders. Whether you like Trump or not, and the jury's out on Trump for a lot of people, he's got in direct line to Donald Trump, the most powerful man in the world. If we've got a leader like that can do all those things and is all those things, I tell you what, I'm going to stand on his coattails and follow him to number 10.
Yeah, no, I get all of that. He's an incredibly impressive human being. But then, like Jeff Townley asks, so one of his so-called questions is, good evening, Mark and everyone. Good evening to you, Jeff. But he also asks, I'm a reform activist, and I'd like to know, when is Farage going to actually democratise the Reform Party? He picks his mates and doesn't seem to want members to have any say. David Bull was not a success when he was deputy to Richard Tyson. I don't think he will be successful as chairman. It's all very despotic. Look, you've got this massive kind of membership base now. What is it? Touching 250,000 people are Reform members. But do you think you've got that kind of, the structures right, such that local branches and associations make their own decisions, that there's input in policy decisions, that the board are elected in part by the members? I mean, what I know Nigel Farage will not want, because it drove him mental at UKIP, is having to navigate petty party committees rather than to get on with the campaigning. But nevertheless, will associations be able to pick their own Reform candidate, or is it all 650 going to be handpicked by Nigel? Those are the sort of things that I hear Reform members asking as genuine questions that
Yeah,
in
so
terms of
on
one way
that
or other.
last point, Mark, yes, the branches are going to pick their own candidates. I mean, I would like to see a situation. Well, we've not started really selecting yet. I mean, that's going to be next year, probably year after. Get people in place. It is democratised. Nigel's given all his shares away. We've got, I think, nearly 500 branches now. I go to my branch meetings. I know my friends go to the ones in Mansfield as well. They choose all the positions. The party has nothing to do with it. But like in all political parties, you do have, some branches do kick off sometimes. It's not just, just the Labour Party or the Tory Party. Any political party, politics can bring the very best and the very worst out in people sometimes. And the local stuff, they can get, remember, the volunteers as well. They do this in their own time. They do it for no money. And they are the lifeblood. But yeah, the party is being democratised. But we've only been going a couple of years, and we've gone from a standing start to having 235,000 members, 450 branches set up, 5 members of parliament, 700 councillors, 2 mayors. I think in the space of 2 or 3 years, that's absolutely phenomenal. Will we make mistakes on the way? Of course we will. We're going to make mistakes. We're human, but we'll hold our hands up. And I know I know Mark mentioned David Bull. We'll have to wait and see, won't we? I think he's a brilliant communicator. He's done a cracking job at our recent rallies and our conferences, especially the one in Birmingham last year. He's a great communicator. He's like Nigel when he's in front of the cameras. He's brilliant at what he does. And as a party chairman, that's what you need. And to say that Nigel falls out with everybody, that's not the case. He's got people with him now. He's been with him for 20 years. And in politics, when you're a leader like Nigel, or in any industry, there's always somebody who wants to knock you off that perch and take your place. And if you're better than that person, then great, go for it and do that. That's healthy. That's competition. But when you're not, when you think you're more popular than that leader, as some people have done recently, and you're not more popular, then quite frankly, just go away and do something else, because this is serious stuff. I'm doing this to save my country, Mark. I love my country. I love everything about it, its history, its heritage, its culture, everything about the country. And that's why I'm in this job. Quite frankly, I could go and make more money flogging kitchens, but I'm in this now, and I've got a bit of a platform, and I've got the whole constituency of Ashfield right behind me. And lots of people in the Red Wall contact me every day to say, Lee, keep it up, keep doing what you're doing. And whilst ever they keep saying that, I'll keep backing Nigel, because he's our pathway to government. It's as simple as that.
I want to ask a bit more about some of Reform's policies, Lee. Martin Hodges asks, and I think we'll put up a poll now. I mean, by the way, I should say that the 100 or so people on this call are not representative of the British electorate, but we'd like to know, when we polled our entire PopCon opinion panel, and there's quite a lot of Conservative Party members who are tempted to vote Reform. So we'll put up a survey question in just a moment, asking people how likely they are to vote Reform. I should say this will be anonymised, don't worry. But I'll vote Reform at the next election. Very likely, unsure, unlikely, very unlikely. Bear in mind, it's probably a Conservative Party leaning audience.
I can see it, yeah.
On Reform's policies, Martin Hodges says, why has Reform's messaging appeared so disjointed, inconsistent, and in some cases contradictory over the last few weeks? You have someone in the background coordinating comms. I'm going to kind of layer my own question onto that. I like you a lot, and I like Nigel a lot, but on economic policy, I think you're a bit dangerously lefty wet pinkos, aren't you? I mean, much as I like you, I mean, why there seems to be lots of more spending on welfare, child benefit caps taken off, so I've got to pay for other people's children.
Yeah, I mean, this is not as being woke or liberal. This is a sign of the times, Mark. This is, the reality is we need more children in this country. And we can't keep burying our heads in the sand and saying we don't. So the welfare thing, I spoke to Nigel about this, because I wasn't 100% happy. But when you speak to him, he makes perfect sense. And yes, some people will abuse the system. We know that. They're going to abuse the system and have countless children they can't look at. That's just the way of the world. But we need more children in this country to go to work when they get to 18 or 21 or whatever. And it's a bit rich sometimes. People saying, oh, this is a bit wet, this is a bit socialist. Tell you what, mate, we're spending £6 million a day on illegal migration. We're going to spend £8 billion on GB energy. We're spending about £11 billion on foreign climate aid. over £12 billion on foreign aid. We're spaffing all this money up the wall, and we can't give a few quid extra for kids having a few more kids. That, by the way, when people's complaining about this, when they're retired at 67, or it could be 70 by the time this lot's done, when they're retired and want to go and drag the old age pension every week, it's those children that'll be working to pay those pensions. It's as simple as that.
But would you say, roughly speaking, and certainly in what you've been saying over this call so far, Lee, I mean, reform, it might be, you're right, these are the old left-right axes which don't really translate into the modern era, but is reform basically get state spending down, get taxes down, get regulation down, get the government off people's backs? Or is it more welfare spending is going to have to remain colossally high? Perhaps there are some industries we should nationalize, like steel, more in that direction of being a more kind of social democratic party. I guess that's where people are trying to work out where you are on that spectrum. And I mean, I'm very much on the Thatcherite free market side of the spectrum.
Yeah,
but I want there to be a government. But as the great American Grover Norquist says, I probably want I do want the government to exist, but I probably want it to be small enough that I could strangle it in the bath if I had to.
Yeah, I think my opinion is the government should be there to protect our borders, which they're failing at. They should be there to provide police, defence, an education system, a healthcare system, and the very basics that we need, Mark, in a civilized society, in a democracy. The rest of it, for me, then keep the nose out of business. Got this stifling business in this country, and they have done for donkey's years now. I wasn't a fan of Thatcher. I've sort of warmed to her a little bit over the past few years. Same with Ronald Reagan as well. We've read quite a bit of stuff on him. But you have to realise that Thatcher was, we saw her as the evil witch, as a wicked witch. She shut all our coal mines, destroyed our communities, and nothing ever came back. It took 30, 40 years to get over that sort of declining industry in our areas, which has led. I mean, the Conservatives bang on about us and be benefits. It's because of that, the legacy of the coal mines closing, the steelworks back in the 80s and 90s, the legacy in my area is that we've got lots of people on benefits, lots of people on disability benefits. We've got third generation of people now in our country that's not gone to work. The
welfare state's failed then, hasn't it?
It's failed. The thing is, Mark, we've got children in Ashfield. They've never heard an alarm clock go off in the morning. I used to hear my dad's alarm clock go off 4:30 every morning. He'd get up and go to the pit. Now, I lived in a household like that for donkey's years. I knew when I got to be a teenager and left school, I'd be getting up to the same alarm clock, going to the pit, doing a shift, earning my wages, paying my taxes, and having a financial stake in society. But we've got third generation of people now that's never seen dad or mum go to work. They've never sat round the dinner table at night time, heard mum and dad talk about their day at work. And it's an incredibly difficult poverty cycle to break. And at some stage, there's going to be one generation that has to suffer over this, because the tax credit system under Blair and Brown is the biggest cause of this benefit system at the moment. In 1998, when they introduced the tax credit system to top wages up, what they did, it was incredibly kind what they did, because it brought people out of poverty. But the unintended consequence of that, Mark, was that people could then drop from full-time hours to working 16 hours a week and get the same wage. Not only that, they're not only earning the same wage, but they're not paying no income tax on the wage because they're below the threshold. And then 20 years later, when their children have grown up and gone to university or gone to work or left home, these same people are then contacting me and saying, Lee, I'm stuck on a minimum wage job, on an entry-level job, and I'm 50-year-old. And it's your fault. It's the government's fault, because you told us we could work 16 hours a week. And that's caused a huge problem, a huge rift. Not only that, Mark, it's meant people have not upskilled. They've not got that promotion. They've not gone to night school or college and got a better job out of it. And meanwhile, their employer has suffered as well, because they've not been able to upskill their own workforce. And guess what? They import somebody from an Eastern European country to fill that skill gap. And then we complain about migration. It's all self-harm.
Really interesting. We've only got 10 minutes to go. We'll put up another survey. We've touched on economic policy here, asking people whether they think that reform's approach to economic policy is sort of going in the right direction or not. Strongly agree with reform's current economic policy. I agree with. Do you strongly agree, disagree, or strongly disagree? Let us know what you think of reform's current approach to the economy. Here's some numbers for you to conjure with, Lee, before I ask you about your erstwhile party and my current party. These are the results, and I say this will be a conservative-leaning audience here. How likely are you to vote Reform at the next election? Very likely, 27%. Likely, 16%.
Wow.
Unsure, 15%. Unlikely, 21%. Very unlikely, 23%. So I guess if you could get the very likelies and the likelies together, 43%, that's a landslide, isn't it?
Well, yeah, it is. I mean, I mean, like you said before, Mark, there's quite a bit of time before now and the next election, and I think we've drawn quite a big percentage of vote from the Conservative Party. You can see that in the polls. It's not rocket science, and I think as we get closer to the election, I suspect that a few of the Tories might drift towards the Lib Dem party. I mean, the Lib Dems anyway, and the Red Wall, the place I harp on about, which is the North and the Midlands. I tell you what, mate, look out for Essex, because that is our South Red Wall. And I think one of the reasons, or the main reason, that those elections were sort of cancelled and supported by Conservative local authorities last year is because they knew what were coming. They knew it was going to be a whitewash. We've got James McMurdoch, who's an MP there. He won. I know it was a slim majority, but look,
he was
at
the one you
majority.
didn't expect to win at all, right?
No,
he
he didn't.
Everybody thought you'd won 4, and then suddenly at 6 o'clock in the morning he popped up.
Yeah, but look at the majorities. I mean, people like Francois and Kemi and some of them, they had 25, 30,000 majorities. They're down to less than, 3 or 4,000, 5,000 majorities now. So that's only going one way. And, I feel for Kemi a little bit. I like her, get on with that campaign for her 3 years ago to be party leader. But she's not united the party. And they're losing more members to us every single day and more councillors, Mark. So it's only going one way.
Really interesting, this. I guess, in a friendly way, although this is a public chat, what advice would you give her? And there's a few questions here about the Conservative Party and going forward. John Wright, it's been our top voted question for a long while, actually. So what would convince you to rejoin the Conservative Party? Because I think your sort of argument was the Conservative Party left you as much as you left it. Richard Watkins asks, should Reform work with the Conservatives if it means getting rid of this Labour government? Jeff Mitchell asks, hi Lee, I'm more than a little disappointed that you jumped ship. I'm not happy about a lot of what happened in the Tory party. Do you think you would have been better if you'd adopted the old advice, better in the tent pissing out than outside the tent pissing in? I mean, how do you think it may not come to it if Reform keeps up this momentum? But how do you think? I mean, you and I are pretty like-minded, even though we're in different political parties. How might you see those of us who are in the Conservative Party who are hugely sympathetic to a lot of what Reform UK stands for, not maybe all of it, but sympathetic to it, with overlaps in the Venn diagram. Do you see this linking together at some point, a pact, and we'll have a poll on this as well in a minute, a merger of some kind, or is the Conservative Party going to go the way of the Liberal Party 100 years ago?
I think the Conservative Party is total, and it's interesting you say, Mark, that the chap who said I'd jumped ship. I'd just like to reiterate that I've stood for election 4 times, twice as a councillor and twice for Parliament in the same area. And the same people have voted for me every single time. So this is a case of voters jumping ship or looking at political parties and saying to themselves, does this party represent my views? My area was a traditional working class Labour, 25,000 Labour majority area. They voted for me as a Labour candidate, they voted for me as a Tory candidate, and they voted for me as a Reform UK candidate. And my vote share at the last election actually went up. So I don't see myself as jumping ship. I see myself as following my constituency, following the people I represent, and being a voice for them because they're saying the same things that I'm saying. And finally, Mark, what they have in me as an MP is somebody who actually understands them and speaks the same language as them. So my advice to Conservative members like yourself and anybody on this chat would be to sit back, have a think about it and say, does the Conservative Party actually represent my views? And if they do, then stay with them.
Really interesting. I mean, I think it was Farage who was saying, where it might go to your third bit, a third of the Tory party should join Reform, he argued, a third should join the Liberal Democrats, and a third should just, I don't know, be vaporised or something. On economic policy, this is quite interesting on your party's present approach to it. 8% strongly agree with you, 16% agree. A very big 45% unsure at the moment, disagree with Reform UK.
Well, that's good. The 45%
Reform
is good.
14.
It is ensured because that gives us time now to get our policies in place before the next election. And goodness knows what state the country's going to be in, Mark. But in the next 3 or 4 years, like I keep harping on about businesses closing in my patch, not recruiting, not reinvesting. Over 11,000 multi-millionaires have left the country. They're not returning anytime soon. And I know we bang on about migration. One of the first things I want to see when we get to power is all these wealthy people that's left. I want to bring them back to the country. Say, look, they've made a mistake. Get back to our country, buy your big posh house or your Lamborghini or your Ferrari, whatever you want to do, but come back and spend your money and pay your taxes in this country rather than be in Portugal or somewhere else.
Yeah, the idea that the biggest problem in Britain was we had too many millionaires.
It's nonsense.
Complete madness. I just want to finish, Lee, by asking you, because I really am worried about the damage that Labour are doing to this country, but I'm also worried that the Tories didn't fix Tony Blair's toxic legacy of basically changing us from a democracy to a quangocracy. And indeed, Conservatives doubled down on that. I mean, it is absolutely vital, not merely to remove Labour in 2029, that might happen anyway, but to have a full plan about how we fix Britain in the 2030s, isn't it? Because I think if this carries on for not just this Parliament, but the one after, then I wouldn't say the United Kingdom is dead, but it will be much, much harder to turn the ship around, right?
I think one of his legacies, which really grips people and winds people up, Mark, is the Equality Act. It really winds people up. When I walk around my constituency, my marketplaces, I get little old ladies coming up to me in the 70s and 80s saying, Lee, carry on saying what you're saying because we don't say anything anymore. This is awful, by the way. When you sit back, Mark, and think that you've got little old ladies and men that were born in the 1930s and 40s that have lived a very productive and decent and honest life in this country. They've gone to work, they've done the bit, they've paid the taxes, they've raised their family, they've saved a bit, they've put a bit by for a rainy day. And they're coming up to me and saying they're too scared to speak out about certain things in this country. I mean, isn't that a shocking state we've got to when 80-year-old women whose husbands or whatever may have fought in the war, to defend themselves, been killed in the war, whatever, we've now got to a situation now where we're just rolling over and letting, like you say, the Quangos or these DEI roles or whatever it is. It's like, we're punishing people and people are too scared to speak out, and Blair created all these roles. It's like spying on people all the time. It's unbelievable, mate. It makes me feel sick. I want to see them all sacked and gone, and let us just crack on. I just before I finish, mate, because I've only got 2 minutes left. As you said when you first started, I was a coal miner for many years, and I worked in a underground in a dirty, dangerous sort of industry where men said things which would quite frankly send the wokerati into meltdown if they could hear some of the language. Bear in mind, a lot of them were Labour supporters as well. They vote Labour because they were voting for the language, the swear words, the references to your sexuality, to your sex, to bodily features and stuff like that would have made these idiots stomach churn. But you know what, mate? It was workplace banter. It wasn't nasty. As soon as you got up the pit, had a wash, had a shower, got your clean clothes on, things changed just like that. Really just like that. And you know what? I fear for people in the workplace now who may make a comment, have a bit of a laugh, bit of a joke, bit of banter. You know what? Next day they're sacked. Yeah. It's incredible.
We've got to get Britain back to where it was
I want my country back.
And constitutionally, haven't we? Look, Lee, I know you're really tight on time. I'll just finish by giving the poll results on what the relationship might be between Reform and Conservatives. 10% want a full merger, 22% want an electoral pact, 36% want a better relationship between the two parties, but falling short of an electoral pact. 15% want us to contest all elections against each other. 18% are unsure. Just before I thank you, Lee, formally, just to remind people, our next guest in Pop Conversations is the Shadow Justice Secretary, Robert Jenrick. I'll be in conversation with him next week. If you haven't signed up yet, please do in the chat. If you haven't signed up to the weekly Friday PopCon Bulletin, there's also details in the chat about how you can get that. Thanks for all of you who have joined us on the live call, the live Zoom call. If you're watching us laterally on YouTube, please go to popularconservatism.com so you can be invited to watch live in future. Really appreciate all of your audience joining us. Lee, it's been a hell of an hour. Really good to chat with you. Glad we agreed on so much. Really looking forward to seeing you again soon. Thanks so much for giving up an hour of your valuable time. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you, Mark. All the best.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great evening. Over and out.